A day may come when the courage of men fails, when they forsake their friends and break all bonds of fellowship. That day is today. The men of Sigmar, the men of the Empire, at the throat of the Dawi people, and no longer will their 2,000-year alliance continue on. It's a sad day. They're in the Chaos Waste for some reason. Why? I have absolutely no idea. One of them is rocking a fantastic codpiece, though. I mean, but just bulging like a mother liquor there. I am incredibly impressed with that. It's a good look, man. It's a good look. Rock it all day long. So, we are on an open field battle with the men of Sigmar and the Dawi of the World's Edge Mountains. And if there's one thing that Sigmar always said, he said, don't shoot the dwarf, Grimgi. And unfortunately, they are going to be breaking that little rule of Sigmar Heldenhammer, and Balthazar Gelt will be leading the men of the Empire into battle with the Staff of Volan's Arcane Conduit, Final Transmutation, and Plague of Rust. Minus 60 armor debuff on the dwarf line. Hella good. Pretty damn strong. And there's a bit of memeing from Sarmation here because he has 2 of these Hellstorm Rocket Batteries, which, to be honest, are not bad versus dwarfs in any way, shape, or form. They're not the most accurate thing in the world, but they've got plenty of AP. They can do some very good damage to the front line. But this is a matchup that has, I think, generally speaking, been in favor of the Dawi. And that's because across the board, they have much higher armor, and they have that shield block chance. So these Empire State Troops get kind of countered by the Miners with blasting charges, and the Great Swords are certainly a counter to a lot of what the Dawi can field. So there is actually 3 of them on the field here, and they can definitely trade well into the infantry for the dwarfs, into Longbeards with great weapons, even into Ironbreakers. They will perform well because of that AP and bonus versus infantry. But handguns kind of get outshot by Thunders. They're a little bit less expensive, but they don't have the armor or the shield block chance. It allows them to trade. And yeah, the state troops will get blown up by all those blasting charges in the front ranks. And for the Dawi, over on the other side of the battlefield, Dwarf Warriors, bunch of Longbeards with great weapons, some Thunders in the back, cannons, and a Goblobber, Grudge Thrower, Catapult. Back here, Dragonback Slayers, they're going to be incredibly useful in this matchup for tying down cavalry, for dealing with any large threats. If Balthazar Gelt decides to be stupid and goon in, he will get tied down and slaughtered in seconds by the Slayers. And he isn't really layering his formation too much, which is interesting. You definitely want to be a little bit, especially on a map that's this open, I would think, maybe get your front ranks a little bit further up so that the overshots from the Hellstorm Rocket Batteries don't land in your back line and hit your Thunderers when they miss. But regardless, we're going to be having an artillery duel early on in this game, and he's doing the right thing. Dwarfs are absolutely doing the right thing with both the Goblobber and the cannons. They're going to be shooting at that Hellstorm Rocket Battery and trying to take them off the field. I mean, in this fight, there's no question about it. Dawi are going to win the artillery duel. It's what they're good at. Their cannon is just more accurate. It's just better from long range. It is meant to snipe down high-value targets like these. And unfortunately for the Empire, they might be losing their Hellstorm Rocket Batteries early. They are getting some good shots in, up to 10 kills so far, and definitely done a lot of HP damage, which is going to be pretty useful once you start closing into melee, because Great Swords are going to want those numbers equalized a little bit more so they can really make their impact felt. But out on this flank, we've got some Empire Knights, and in the middle here, some more Dwarf Warriors, and there's also a Rune Lord, as you might expect. Not popping his Rune of Oath and Steel or anything that might help them survive a little bit better in this artillery trade as the game starts. But we do have some Empire Knights moving around. They'll be trying to get in the back flank and get some rear charges in. Balthazar Gelt might look for some final transmutations here. And one of the things with the Dwarfs, they very often will do this. They'll get a little bit blobbed up, and then if you've got the Rune Lord and the Rune Smith in the same blob, you cast an Overcast Final Transmutation, and it's going to do a lot of damage. And that's actually what he's going to do here. He didn't catch the Rune Lord, but look at the damage on that Rune Smith. Extended Effect Duration, dealing so much damage to the Miners, to the Dwarf Warriors, and to the Goblobber, some Thunders as well. Quite a lot of value generated from one spell. Now, it's a very expensive one. I want to say Overcast, it's like 27, 28 Winds of Magic. Pretty powerful, but very, very expensive to field and use. But Gelt will have to be careful because the Thunders are firing in and doing quite a bit of damage, and on the Pegasus back there, doesn't have a lot of HP, so he's going to want to move around and get away from those artillery shots and from the hand cannons that are those Thunders. Spearmen moving up now. They've got shields. They're going to be able to block some shots here, but they are, they're chaff. They're going to have a really bad time as soon as they get into range of those Miners with blasting charges. They're going to get exploded into lots of itty-bitty pieces, But I like how aggressive Sarmation is getting with these Empire Knights. He's got plenty of opportunity here to maybe get into the squishy stuff. If he wants to maybe get around, he can get into the cannons and then go for a charge into the Thunderers. But the Dragonback Slayers and these Slayers are nearby. And a little bit of a micro mistake getting them tied down, but they've got plenty of time to skirt around and get into the cookie jar. That's what he's going to do. Now, this is a pretty common tactic. Empire Knights only 850 gold. Sometimes you don't mind sacrificing them just to open up the box and allow your other stuff to get in. But really nice play from the Dwarfs, and a bit of a micro mistake from Sarmation here. They are going to get tied down by Dwarf Warriors and by the Dragonback Slayers, and this is a nightmare situation for Empire Knights. They are going to get shish kebabbed and sent to the trash can by these Slayers, who do have that slowing aura. So these Empire Knights are quickly going to fall and collapse under the weight of the Dawi assault. But on this side, well, everything's kind of focused over there, and the Thunderers focus fire. Might get a charge from the Empire Knights on this flank. And you can see Power Rocket Batteries have not died to the cannons, which is a problem for the Dawi. And a nice charge coming in on those Dwarf Warriors, sandwiching them, getting on both sides of that formation. That's going to hurt pretty bad. More Slayers coming in to reinforce. Over on this side, Empire Knights, they just got dropped so quick there. They're out of the fight, and we probably won't see them again. And the State Troops up the center, taking a lot of damage from those blasting charges. And it's such a good unit for such a cheap price. They are an amazing, amazing tool for the Dwarfs. And, I mean, Spearmen are getting destroyed as they charge in, and they don't really have much of a chance. Right here, we got Empire Knights and some Dwarf Warriors fighting it out, and looks like the Dawi are sallying forth. Big charges coming in, and the Longbeards are going to give them the bad touch with those big two-handed axes. So Rune of Oath and Steel and Master Rune of Negation going down as another final transmutation hits a huge blob of the Dawi line. That'll pretty much be the end of Balthazar Gelt's casting this game. But I think it's going to be worth it. Hit the Rune Lord, hit the Slayers, hit the Dwarf Warriors, hit more of them over on this flank, and the Longbeards as well. But remember, they do have that Locus of Power. They also have that magic resistance when they're nearby the Rune Lord. And he's got his own stuff. Well, actually, no. He doesn't have his... He's not on top of his Anvil of Doom, so he's not going to be giving that map-wide magic resistance buff. So they're actually not going to have double on top of their regular innate magic resistance, but still... Dawi have that 22% magic resist. It's definitely going to help them sustain a little bit better than a lot of other factions. Over here, Handgunners getting destroyed by the Dragonback Slayers, and this is one thing they're so good for. They've got 40 speed, so they're way faster than Handgunners, and when they get on their target, they're going to slow them down even more. Going to do a lot of damage and cause a lot of havoc in the Empire backline. Great Swords on target right now, up to 35 kills, definitely doing a lot of damage, and the Silver Bullet Handgunners also very good choice against the Dawi. They just have so much AP. Even though they do deal magic damage, they're still not a bad choice against the Dwarfs. They hit pretty hard. Empire Knights coming back in. They took a lot of damage to the Slayers. Thunder is firing back, and the cannon is actually still online, although two of its cannons are offline. We've got one more still firing in, doing a decent amount of damage. Over here, Dragonback Slayers, you need to get on target, buddy. I don't know where you're running to. Go right for these guys, run them over, and they're actually going to take a full couple volleys to the face, and heads will roll as the handguns get smashed apart by the Goblobber. They'll get one more volley in. They're actually not going to. They're going to run away, and the Dragonback Slayers will feast on them. They'll be able to catch up for sure. Balthazar Gelt taking a lot of damage. Rune of Wrath and Rune going down on him. I would definitely be saving that for the Great Swords. I wouldn't worry too much about Gelt right now. He's used both his final transmutations. Not that important a target at this point, but if you're casting those Runes of Wrath and Ruin, especially the Master Rune, it is so good at deleting Great Swords from the battle, and you need to, because with that, what is it? It's 32 weapon strength. A lot of that bonus versus infantry and AP. You just want them gone. They're going to be carving through your front line. And even buffed up by the Rune of Oath and Steel, these Dawi are going to have a really hard time holding against the Great Swords. They're not the top tier amazing infantry unit that maybe like Chaos Warriors with great weapons are. They're certainly one that can put a big dent into a Dawi battle line. Dragonback Slayers are just terrors right now. They are carving up the back for the Empire, and all these handgunners are having a real bad time back there. Empire Knights only up to 8 kills. They actually did come back, tying down some of the Thunderers. That's all the value they can generate at this point. They don't have enough models to get a lot of killing done, but if you can tie down AP long-range units, certainly not a bad thing. And over here, Runesmith coming back with the Rune of Negation. I'd say that the Dwarfs are actually holding pretty admirably on their left flank, and Balance Bar still dead even. I don't know if... Yeah, Gelt's getting sent into melee now. I'm pretty sure he's completely out of Winds of Magic. We might see one more Plague of Rust this game, but that's pretty much going to be it. Even with Staff of Volans and even with that Arcane Conduit, he's just not going to have a lot more on top of it. But he's getting some really good kills here. Not the best melee combatant, but certainly good enough to kill some Thunders in melee. And yet another Rune of Wrath and Ruin going down on the Great Swords and deleting them from the game. And these ones are on their last legs, only 1,000 HP left. The Hellstorm rocket batteries have continued to pound the Dwarfs for the entirety of the battle, but only up to 24 kills, which isn't amazing, and that's why it's kind of a meme unit. It's not that it's terrible in terms of DPS, but sometimes it's not the most reliable, and it's definitely not very accurate. Good job here from Sarmation to tie them down with some spears and fire in from the flank, even with those whirling axes to get that missile resist, that missile block chance. I mean, close range handgunner volleys are going to hurt, but they're on the hunt once again. Get that enfilade fire going with the multiple handgun units, and these Dragonback Slayers will not enjoy that in any way, shape, or form. I think some Dawi might have chased off an Empire Knight unit coming back full strength into the fight now. Rune Lord still trying to bolster everything on the left flank, but it's wavering at this point. Even with that plus 60 armor, Great Swords are definitely going to be able to push through. That's crazy. 145 armor on Dwarf Warriors. It's going to be hard for even Great Swords to cut through. And over here, it looks like there's been more routing on the Dawi line, and Balthazar Gelt, 102 kills. A lot of that from the final transmutation. Definitely made a big impact here. Hellstorm Rocket Battery dropping on top of the reinforcing Dawi. Great Swords trying to get into a rear charge and maybe completely surround them. And again, the Dragonback Slayers have been used so well this game, just carving through all these handgun units. I think this is the third or fourth they've given the bad touch. And as they charge in, more heads will roll. Albino ginger heads, mohawks will fly as the handguns get more shots in. But yeah, I mean, as this unit dies, so will the silver bullet handguns. It's getting pretty even here. Balance we're starting to shift a little bit back in the Dawi favor, and in fact, the Rune Lord charging in with an RKO into the center of the Greatsword line. He's actually carving through them, and the Greatswords are wavering and routing. They need Gelt over here to reinforce, and they're going to push back the Empire on this side. I did not think that was going to happen. They are definitely on the verge of routing, and over here the Runesmith has routed. It looks like Gelt will be able to chase him down and maybe finish him off, and he has. Runesmith dead. Pretty important. Those Runes of Wrath and Ruin made mincemeat out of those great swords. Definitely hurt him. And in the center, Rune Lord still holding on, but this could go either way. Longbeards and great swords fighting it out. Immune to Psych on the Longbeards, but against the Empire, unless they bring Royal Altdorf Griffites, doesn't really matter. So they're pretty much not going to trade that well into great swords. But they're both AP. I mean, they both hurt each other pretty bad. So it's going to be a relatively even fight because both are really, really low in terms of their HP threshold. Nice hit from the Rune Lord there. You see this very often without the Anvil of Doom just because it's so cost efficient. Just bring maybe 1 or 2 runes and that's pretty much it. And really cost effective, really good way to make sure you get some value out of your Lord without investing too much into him. Dwarf Warriors, Great Swords fighting it out. Great Swords up to 175 kills. Of course, a lot of that on Miners. Really big shot from the Hellstorm Rocket Battery. But it looks like the Dwarf Warriors managed to push them back. And that will be the end of those guys. Gelt hunting down some of these routing Longbeards and Dwarfs. But I think this is starting to shift a little bit more in the Empire's favor. I would like to see what would happen in a duel between Gelt and the Rune Lord. I mean, they've had such a storied alliance. It's sad to see it end this way in such a brutal, terrible betrayal. The Empire killing their friends of 2,000 years. Makes me kind of sad. But the Book of Grudges will certainly have a new entry after this one. It looks like Gelt going after some Thunders, carving them up, slicing them up, and the Pegasus will give him mobility to pretty much close down any target he wants to this battle. More handgun volleys arcing forward and slicing through what remains of the Dawi forces. Longbeards, I don't think that the Dwarfs can actually win this game because that handgun unit could probably kite them into oblivion alongside what remains of the Empire frontline, Swordsman, and Gelt himself. 1,000 HP, he could probably take that Rune Lord in a 1v1 fight. It is a little bit weird that Gelt doesn't deal magical damage in melee. In fact, I think most spellcasters do on the tabletop and in the source material. If you're amazing at casting spells, why wouldn't you ensorcel your weapons, right? But it's one of those long, weird things about Total War Warhammer that magic damage doesn't always benefit you, even though in tabletop it almost always did. So these dwarfs will charge forward into the Empire Swordsman. A little bit more cutting from Sarmation will be all that's required, and I think this will put the nail in the coffin for what remains of the Dawi line. Some really good kills on these handguns. 96. I think that the dwarfs did some things really well this game, but they didn't layer their defense. They didn't do that onion style of play where you have that front line way ahead of your back line, and that made it a little bit easier for the Empire to inundate the cannons, tie down that Goblobber, and also shut down the Thunderers with some Empire Knight play. Few missed micros on terms of the Empire Knights. Definitely got caught up a little bit on those Slayers. And of course there was some memeing from the Hellstorm rocket batteries as well. But as the bounce bar shifts even more in the Dawi's favor, or the Empire's favor rather, this will pretty much be your game, and we're going to call it here. So big final transmutation. He actually got off another one at the end, and that's going to cause the mass rout as the Empire takes it. So there are a couple ways to play the Empire versus Dawi matchup. Again, I do think that it benefits, it goes the way of the Dawi to an extent. I don't think it's a truly horrendous matchup for the Empire. There are plenty of things they can do to equalize the numbers a bit. One of the ones that you'll often see is real heavy on the greatsword. So you saw 3 here, and I mean, there's a reason they're very good in this matchup. I mean, 174 kills, 125, 57, certainly not bad, generated plenty of value. It's not uncommon to see 5 or 6 though. And the reason for that is that they're just so damn good against armored stunties. They're short, they're infantry, they're heavily armored. How do you deal with that? You add bonus versus infantry and you add AP. So you have 5 or 6 of them. That can be pretty powerful. You buff them up with a warrior priest right next to them. That is also going to help and give them some damage resist to maybe sustain against some of those blasting charges and all that range fire that will be arcing in. And then on top of all that, I think that one of the best ways to deal with them is get a lot of handguns. Outnumber their handguns. And so that's what you saw from Sarmation here. Looks like the Dawi only had 2 Thunder units. I think that maybe you want to invest in a little bit more than that. They're just so good in this matchup. But I think Rangers and Quarrelers can also do some work for you here as well. In fact, I think that some ways is the good way to counter the Empire, right? If you go pretty heavy on the Rangers, you can get pretty aggressive and shut down the handgun play. And here, there wasn't much to shut them down. And there's a reason these guys got 98 kills. He actually did a pretty decent job. I mean, 11, 4, and 24. Certainly not a lot of kills there, but these ones, 98. That is a lot. That is a lot of value from those handguns. And one of the best ways to shut them down is just shoot them from long range. Get your 160 range archers on top of them. They're going to be pretty sad. So we saw Gelt with 155 kills, which is incredibly impressive. I cannot tell you the last time I saw that many from the Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic, who wields the Wind of Chameau. Definitely kicked ass this game. Some really nice final transmutations from Sarmation there. And the Dragonback Slayers used very well by the Dawi. Got into the back. I think they actually shut down 3 or 4 entire units of handguns. That is actually a big reason why these units right here didn't do very much. I think if Sarmation hadn't gotten quite so aggressive with his cav and gotten them tied down in those initial charges, probably would have been in a better position. I think if he maybe held them back a little bit longer, waited for those front lines to get a little bit, just buckle a bit, and the box to kind of break down a bit, he would have gotten those Empire Knights into a better position and gotten a lot more kills if he could get some charges into those Thunderers and the Great Cannons after that. Pretty interesting game, though. I think the Empire versus Dwarf matchup is a very gunpowder-centric one, which is always fun when you see 2 factions that should be loving each other, shooting the crap out of each other. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next game. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Peace.